So just first want to say thank you everyone for coming. We're really excited to have Kathy here to present on all of the different resources for genealogy. It seems like a lot of you already know Kathy, but I just wanted to, for those who might not know her, Kathy Nielsen is a reference librarian and an educator. She is currently a popular genealogy speaker on the Monterey Peninsula. She's been featured on Lisa Lois Cook's weekly YouTube program. Correct me if I mess this up.
Lisa Louise Cook.
Louise Cook, and her program name is Eleven's.
11Z's, because
11Z's.
it's on at 11 o'clock in Texas time.
Kathy is Kathy is the co-founder of the Monterey County Genealogy Society's special interest writing group known as Off the Charts. Kathy incorporates her skills as a historian, storyteller, and librarian in her search for her family history. So thank you, Kathy, for being here, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and let's see. Okay, can you all see that? Yep. Great. Okay, well, welcome to All Things Relative, Finding Family at the Library. And this is a series that we're going to have for the next few months. Speaking of relatives, this is probably 1915 this picture was taken. This Model T was owned by my grandfather, and that's my grandfather in the driver's seat. And my uncle and aunt are both in that picture. So I can date it because I know what their ages were. And I also can date it because I know the general time that this Model T was issued. So next month, we're going to talk about photos and how you can kind of date your photos and figure out who's in them. So that's next month. But today, we're going to talk about the details. And the details are what make up our stories. And those of you who are storytellers are interested in those details. And one of the places we can find them are our local libraries and historical societies. Now, when I say local libraries, I'm not just talking about the local libraries in Monterey County. I'm talking about the libraries that are all over the country, that are in the towns that our ancestors came from, because our Monterey ancestors came from someplace. So we're interested in the libraries, the public libraries, and the archives in those towns as well. You may recognize this place. This is the California History Room, which is at the Monterey Public Library. And this is a little gem that is on the second floor, which has all kinds of details and things that you can add to your story, particularly if you have Monterey relatives. You'll notice on the lower right, there's a vertical file, and that is packed with thousands of clippings, obituaries, photos, different things that are not digitized. So that's the thing to remember about these little libraries. They are not necessarily online. Okay, so let's just sort of review why we even do this. It's crazy. It takes up a lot of our time. It's addictive. We're up late at night. But there's reasons why we do this. So I thought we'd just go over some of them to remind ourselves why we do this crazy thing. This is a picture of a fan chart, and this is my mother. She's in the center there, and you can see my parents, my mother, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and I've researched parts of her family, but I've got a lot of holes there. So I'm going to be busy for a few years. But why do we research our family? Well, many of us are seeking answers to family questions, and we want to validate those stories that we were hearing over the years. Some of us may want to trace medical conditions, and we can do that. We can see what our ancestors, what kinds of things that they were dealing with during their lives. We might even want to find birth parents. I do have an adoptive daughter, and when we do talk about DNA, I'll share some of the things that she did when she was searching. Maybe you like proof of paternity. Maybe there's a question somewhere in the lineage. You want to track land ownership, which we can do. We can see how families move by land ownership. You want to trace a family inheritance. Maybe you wonder why you aren't the one that got that family inheritance, but maybe you would like to trace and see where it came from. And maybe you want to join a lineage society. That would be like the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution, the Mayflower, the Golden West, Sons of the Golden West. These are things that might interest you. But for me, there were other aspects as well. And they were almost philosophical, psychological, spiritual. But they are, one of them is because I'm a librarian, I love being a detective. I love solving mysteries. I love finding out the secrets. That's just in my DNA, so to speak. But maybe it's in yours too. And certainly those of you that have gotten into genealogy, you like being a detective. I also have this feeling about standing on the land or in a house where my ancestors once lived, where they lived and loved and laughed and cried and maybe even died. There's almost a spiritual experience for me, of being in that place and thinking about what their lives were like. I'm also, and maybe you are too, curious about my ancestors and the role they played in my life. For example, I found that I have a lot of teachers in my background, and that makes sense. It's sort of like been part of our lineage. I think that knowing about your ancestors may help you develop your own sense of identity. And I found that I've been empowered by the truth and in some ways able to heal some old wounds. You develop compassion and understanding, and you understand why family members live the life that they did. You may accept them and realize that they're just people trying to survive and do the best they could with the life they were given. So that's some of the reasons why I've gotten involved in genealogy, and some of those may resonate with you as well. My mother was a storyteller. She loved to tell stories, and she maybe used a little hyperbole, which made it even more fun. So I wanted to uncover more about those stories that I had heard. I wanted to solve some of the mysteries, and I'm so sorry I didn't ask her more questions, but I didn't. And I wanted to get to know some of my ancestors. So what I would suggest for you all, if you haven't done this already, and it takes some time, but go in there and look at the things you have at home that can help you put it all together. So by that, I mean like your parents' notes, their research, photographs you may have. You may be lucky enough to have some letters that were written by some of your ancestors, diaries, journals, memoirs, maps, the family Bible, if you are fortunate to have that, that's a real gem. And maybe there's some physical items that have been passed on down, furniture, china, quilts. So think about those and think about what they tell you about your ancestors. This is a little scrap of paper that one of my husband's cousins passed on to me. And this is loaded with information. This little thing that someone wrote down, this says Lawrence Ryan. He was born in 1808 and died in 1882. My husband is Australian. This ancestor, it's actually an in-law, was a marriage by marriage, came over on a ship, the Waterloo. The master of the ship was COW. The surgeon was George Roberts. He came from Ireland. He landed from Ireland, and he was tried at, it gives the jail there, West Heath, it may be, or Meath, in 1836. His crime, he was sentenced. His crime, his native place is Ireland. He was a farm servant. That is a gem. I have all kinds of information from that little scrap of paper. So see if you can find those scraps of paper in your family, in your things. So there's three things that you want to identify. You want to identify the names, and that would include maiden names, because if we can trace them if we don't have it, but maiden names are so helpful. The dates, because then we can place our ancestors in time. and the locations where they lived. So this would be another little scrap of paper of a timeline that was in that packet of notes that were from my husband's cousin. Maybe you have something like this. Now you'll want to confirm it because sometimes people are just putting this down, but this gives you a place to start. And when you get more involved in it, you can set up your own timelines or your own pedigree charts, or you can put them on Ancestry or one of the subscription sites. This is from my software, and you can see my mother. I know her birth date, I know her marriage date, I know where she was born, I know where she was married, and I know where she died. So those are the things that you want. But that's just a hanger. We want to put the details on that hanger and put this story together. So we want to know which ancestors and which locations you want to research. And we want to discover the details that will add to this story that we can build on. And we want to weave those details together. So what are we going to be looking for? We're going to look at clues to these names, dates, and locations, because those are critical. We're going to track a family's movements. We're going to show the growth of a family, the new babies that are born, the new children. We're going to document the property, where they lived, what they owned. And we're going to look at information about the towns and the cities where our family lived. We're going to look at their occupations. And we want to find out about their neighbors, their friends, their churches, their schools. These are the details we're going to go looking for. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, the first thing is we're going to want to exhaust online resources. We're not going to focus on that too much today because we're going to look at those little libraries that are all over the country. But Google, of course, you want to check out. And the big 4+1. Now, what are the big 4+1? These are the big 4. These are the subscription sites that you pay for and the free ones that are online in libraries. Ancestry, MyHeritage, and Find My Past are 3 subscription sites that you pay for. Fabulous, wonderful. But we can find information not having to pay as well. Ancestry, in fact, is on our California History site right here, our Monterey Public Library. Right here, and I put these links on that sheet of paper in case you want to go back. Here's the history and genealogy databases that the Monterey Public Library has. And you can see Ancestry is right here. Billions of records. And Heritage Quest is right here. These are both free, and you can access these remotely from your home. Ancestry during COVID has made them available for remote access. But if they do take this away, you can go into the Monterey Public Library when it's open and you can access Ancestry free. So you don't have to pay for all these things. But getting back to these sites, MyHeritage is a site, an Israeli site that has a lot of information on Europe. So if you're looking for European ancestors, this is a good site to access. And Find My Past is British. Heritage Quest is on our Monterey Public Library website. Family Search is free. That's every bit as good as Ancestry, and anyone can access that. And that's put together by the Latter-day Saints. And they have done a wonderful service of making this available. Okay, what next? So we've looked at online resources. So now let's move to the local libraries and archives, those historical and genealogical societies, the museums, and the family history centers. So why are they important? They have information that is not available through the big 4 subscription sites. They are not on those sites. And the reason why, they have their own online sources, so you can have access to that. But the problem is that they have not been digitized in many cases. Many have, and many are moving to do that. In fact, Monterey Public Library is moving to do that. But at this point, there are so many things that have not been digitized that you have to contact the library. So what's there that's not been digitized? Okay, it's the things in that vertical file that are gems. The Monterey Public Library gets many, many emails and phone calls from people all over the country asking for information. And the librarians, Sean included, will scan and send things back. So know that even though you can't go to these libraries, you still have access to this information. So these are the things that are there: family trees, letters, photographs, manuscripts, maps, memoirs, journals, newspaper clippings, obituaries, the state census, which is really important because the 1890 census was destroyed, and we rely on our state censuses to track our ancestors. Directories are another way of tracking the location of our ancestors. And Monterey Public Library and many little libraries have a wonderful collection of yearbooks. And Monterey High is really well represented at the Monterey Public Library. So if you're interested in looking up old classmates, that's the place to go. Also, these things are in archival boxes like this, and they're on shelves in the back room of these libraries. So librarians will get them out for you, and you can go through them and look at them, but know that they're there and they're not digitized. And I have found some wonderful things in these archival boxes. The Monterey County Historical Society, which is in Salinas on Baranda Road, has a vault, an archival vault. And these are the kinds of things that are in that vault. And these things are not digitized. This is the voter registration for the county of Monterey. So this is an amazing source. These are tax assessment records, also not digitized. These are directories. Now, many directories have been digitized. I'm not sure about Salinas, but the originals are there out on Baranda Road. Maps, those cabinets in the back hold maps. This is Criminal Proceedings, a book that in Monterey County. Of course, artwork, books. Here's more criminal archives. Here's a diary and an 1897 directory. Now, those are things that are all in the Monterey County Historical Society library in their vault. So the local libraries and the archives that are around us, and we're going to be talking about ones outside of our county, but these are the ones that you might, if you have Monterey ancestors, you might want to definitely check out. The California History Room at the Monterey Public Library, our county libraries, our county free libraries, that would be Seaside, Carmel Valley, Marina, etc. Our Carmel and Pacific Grove Public Libraries, our Salinas Library, the Mayo Hayes O'Donnell Library, I'll talk a little bit more about that, the Historical Society, the San Benito Historical Society, the Monterey County Genealogy Society, which is a great group to connect with because there are many volunteers that will help you with your searches, and the Family History Center in Seaside, which is connected to the LDS Church, which is a wonderful, wonderful staff by, it's open again, by the way, you can make that reservations. They're limiting the number of people that can go there. Okay, so let's start with Monterey Public Library. Here's the California History Room, and Sean is a reference and local history librarian at the Monterey Public Library, and he loves answering questions, and he's been answering questions this whole last year. So the library has been open and active, at least online. Here's the California History website. And there's Doc Ricketts. What I wanted to show you on this site are the different things: clipping files, archival materials, all the photographs. here's some links that you might want to check out. Here's the link to the Monterey County Herald, which has been indexed, and some other links. So that's all on that sheet of paper that I talked about. So that's the Monterey Public Library. Now, this is a Monterey County free libraries, our county library. This has an amazing digital archive. It is online. They have really put some of their photos online. You can see these are all their collections. And if you have ancestors in any of these areas, be sure and check this out. They also have a wonderful, absolutely wonderful list of all of the archives and resource areas in Monterey. Jennifer Smith is a local history and special projects librarian, and she would be the person to contact, and she will just walk you through this. But you can see all of the places that are now, those of you that are from San Joaquin, you have this too. So you want to make sure that there's a little libraries that you're checking out. This agricultural historical project, yes, Sean, did you? This agricultural historical project, Sean mentioned this with the History Slam. James Perry, who is at the Monterey County Historical Society, suggested that I go over there because I have Miller and Lux people that were the big agricultural company in the 19th century that owned thousands of acres. And so that's a place that I need to go. But you can see, here's the diocese, if you have Catholic ancestors, here's Big Sur, it goes on and on. So be sure and check out that site. Okay, and then the Carmel Public Library has Katie O'Connell is the local history librarian there. And they have newspapers, maps. I love this. They have, let me just show you the houses and buildings. If you are searching for houses, they have some actual building permits, building research, this inventory of historic Carmel buildings, the artisans that were involved in historic building brochures. This is another wealth of information. They have the pine cone indexed. So Carmel Public Library is a place to check out as well. Just trying to whet your appetite here, so you want to look at these a little further. Pacific Grove has newspapers. It has city directories. It has pamphlets and brochures. Also, you want to check that one out. Now, the Mayo Hayes O'Donnell is a funny little library that's right up the street from the Monterey Public Library. It's in the old St. James Episcopal Church, which was built in about 1876. The church later moved up to, I believe it's up there on Van Buren. It's up behind the library. But this little church was moved from Pacific to Van Buren. It's been on Van Buren right now. And it's run by the Monterey History and Art Association. It has vertical files of family trees, family documents, letters, information on Monterey businesses, lots of books, family history. It isn't open a lot, so you want to call and make a reservation. Of course, it hasn't been open this last year, but this is a place to check out. It's got some very interesting little details. So be sure and look this one up. Okay, let's see. Let me go back a bit here. I love the Monterey County Historical Society. James Perry is the curator and archivist. He will spend so much time with you. He is so great. But they have, just for a field trip one day, to go over to the Veranda Adobe. That's interesting. The original, they've moved that Adobe over there and remodeled it, or at least brought it up to code. And William Weeks' house, which was a 19th century Victorian house, is also there. They have a school. They have a bunkhouse. They have all kinds of things. And I have found a lot of information in this library. So you make an appointment with James, and James will bring things out of the vault, and you can take pictures or whatever. But this is definitely a place to explore. And then the San Benito County Historical Society. This library is only open one day a month, the first Monday of each month, and it's now open again. You again need to make a reservation, but they are so helpful. Those volunteers are wonderful, and they will pull out things for you and just become involved in your search as much as you are. Now, the libraries and archives that are all over the country. In the town where your ancestor lived, there very likely is a public library. So check out their website. The Family History Library in Salt Lake City is amazing. It's the largest, probably the largest genealogy library in the world, but it is certainly in this country, and that is one you'll want to explore. The Allen County Public Library is the second largest genealogy library in the country. The New England Historic Genealogical Society is in Boston, and if you have colonial ancestors or New England ancestors, you really do want to connect with this society. All of these libraries do not have things that are not necessarily digitized, and that's why you want to connect with them directly. Archives, not everything on the National Archives is digitized. Not everything at the Library of Congress is digitized. And there are state libraries and university libraries that can just be so helpful. So how do you find these libraries? How do you do? Well, you do a Google search. So that's one place to start. But I like to use the Family Search Wiki. And what is that? That's a wiki that identifies institutions and different things that will help you find information. And we're going to look at that in just a bit. Once I found a place, I like to look at the website, the research guides, and the catalog of that local public library to see what they have, because they often will list other organizations in their area that they recommend that you also look at. And I also check out Facebook, because Facebook often has an institution may have a presence on Facebook that gives you an idea. Okay, let's look at the Family Search Wiki. This is on the Family Search site, the site that is put together by the Latter-day Saints. This is an amazing wiki. This is just amazing. Let me show you how this works. I use it to find mostly locations. So I'm going to put a county where my ancestors lived, which is Trail County in North Dakota. It brings up a collaborative chart, a web page of all of the things that are related to Trail County that might help me in my search. And you can see they're showing me the county courthouse, they're showing me boundary changes, they're showing me townships, etc. But if I go down to this sidebar and I look at archives, let's see if I can find the archives here. Here we go, archives. It shows me places to go that are near my family's homestead. The North Dakota State University Archives, I have used them and they are amazing. So that's one tip. That's one place I want to go. The Goose River Heritage Center, another place I want to go. Here's Trail County Historical Society, and here's Hatton Eliason Museum and Historical Association. So I have found that this website is amazing, and I would recommend that as a first place to start when you're looking for information on your ancestors that are out of the area. And then once you've found these places, call them, email them, and if you can, visit them. Librarians like to answer questions. That's what we do. That's why we're in the profession we're in, and we are happy to help. Don't be shy about it. Call and email and even visit, and we will find you the details that you need to make your story come to life. So here's an example. I found out that Grand Forks Library was close to the little town of Buxton, where my family was from. And I wrote the librarian, and she wrote me right back. And she said, there's no, my family's Swedish in North Dakota. There's no Swedish museum in Grand Forks, but there is a special collection at the Chester Fritz Library. So she recommended that. And then she went on to say, try the Trail County Historical Society, try the Myra Museum, enjoy your visit. I got that right back. So as I planned my trip, I had some places that I wanted to explore. I went further and checked on Facebook for anything on Trail County. And I wrote the Trail County Historical Society. And I told them about my great-grandfather, Anders Petter Anderson, and my great-uncle, Carl Johansson Sandgren. And I told them when they lived there and when they moved there, and could they help me? And they got back to me. So be sure and use Facebook. Facebook is a great tool for genealogists. The Family History Library in Salt Lake City. This is an example on the right of the microfilm. All of their microfilm is not digitized. And there are rows and rows like this of microfilm. They do have, fortunately, if you can't visit Salt Lake City, they're now organizing virtual genealogy consultations. And you can sign up for a half an hour, 20-minute consultation with one of their volunteers or librarians, and they'll get you started on using the Family Search site. So avail yourself of that. The Allen County Public Library, Fort Wayne, Indiana, second largest in the country, also has 30-minute personal research consultations free with a staff member. And they have things from all over the country. It's not just Indiana. You might want to look at their website too, because it's pretty full. The New England Historic Genealogy Society also has consultations. Because it's a private organization, unfortunately, they do charge. I've used them twice, and I went back there, and I've also used them online, and they are very helpful. So if you do have colonial people, please avail yourself of that. There's a little library in Ontario. I have Loyalist ancestors who had to escape to Canada. The United Empire Loyalist Heritage Center. It's in this Victorian house. And we were passing through Adolphustown, Ontario. And I wrote them and said, I'd love to come by and see what you have on my Loyalist ancestors who lived in your area. And they were closed on Sunday. But a volunteer said, no, I'll come by and I'll help you. And she opened up the library and pulled all of these books for me. And wow, a wonderful afternoon. So, this is the kind of thing. Figure out where these places are, and people will work with you online. So these are the things we're going to find. We're going to find family trees and notes, the Bible, photographs, directories, voting registers, newspaper articles, maps, land records, health records, school records, audio and video recordings, and local histories that are not digitized and not in the Big Four subscription sites. This is Stanford Library in Connecticut. You remember when we used to make copies and it was on that brown paper? This is a family tree folder that was in the vertical file of the Stanford Public Library in Connecticut, and the librarian had pulled that out. Notice also I have below that my own family tree. I always take that when I do research so I can figure out where people are. It's handy, or I have it on my phone too. But anyway, those are the gems that are there. The handwritten, typed family trees and notes are in these vertical files. I found this at the Family History Center in Salt Lake City. This was a coup because I had a brick wall with Jan Aliyah, and this was somebody's family tree that they had put together. It was in the Family History Library, and it got me to go back beyond him. Of course, I wanted to confirm this. You can't always, say that this is absolutely right, but at least gave me a start. The Allen County has family Bibles. If you have a family Bible, you might consider scanning those pages and sending them to the Allen County Public Library. But your family may be in this record, and those Bibles are really helpful in location and dates. Photos, oh my goodness, the photos. The Monterey the Monterey History Library has 30,000 to 40,000 photos. The Monterey County Free Libraries have thousands. And I was able to find some things at the Kingsburg Historic Society, which was helpful for me in a book that I was putting together for my family. Here's just one example of what's available in the California History Room. This is a sardine fishing boats in 1933. Just Sean will help you find these things. These are all there. The Monterey County Free Libraries has a digital archive, and I was lucky to find this picture of the school where my grandmother and her brothers went to school in Prunedale. So this was really nice to find for what I was putting together on that family. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that family when we look at houses of families. That will be in a couple of months, how to find information on the houses of your family. And this was downtown Kingsburg. My Swedish family moved from North Dakota to Kingsburg. And as I was putting things together, I really wanted pictures of what Kingsburg was like when they arrived. And this was the main street of Kingsburg when they arrived. Directories. Now, directories help you place a family in time. And I was delighted to find this at the Monterey Public Library. The Monterey Public Library has directories that go back to the turn of the century. And this one's 1906. And I know you can't see it, but my great grandfather, step-grandfather, is here. And it was interesting to see that they had a phone. They were in Prunedale. And it looks like it was a party line. He was a farmer. And they did at the turn of the century have a phone, and I was interested in finding that out. I found out later in the census they also had a radio too. So you start to put together these details about the lives of people that you didn't know, but you can still have a sense of what they were like. The 1890 census was destroyed, so we don't have a record of where people lived in 1890, but voting records help us. And this is something in the Monterey Public Library as well. The Genealogy Society put this together, and it tells the people who are registered. Of course, the women aren't on this, but my great-grandfather is mentioned. And I was interested in seeing that he was at that time a stock raiser, 41, and he was living in Monterey County in 1881 when he first registered, which I did know, but that confirmed that. So voter registration really helps us place our families in time, particularly 1890. This was something I found over at the Monterey County Historical Society. This was my step-grandfather. This is step-great-grandfather in Prunedale. I thought this was really interesting. John Collins, he was 48. He was 5'7". His right hand is stiff. I thought that was really an interesting voter identification. He's from New York, and he was living in Prunedale. Now, newspapers. Oh, newspapers are so helpful. Of course, we have the subscription websites, but they don't include the newspapers of the little towns. Newspapers sometimes are online, like in the Monterey Public Library, and they're on microfilm, but they're not on the subscription websites. So the Library of Congress has Chronicling America. Some of those papers are not on subscription websites. These newspapers are in clipping files, and they have obituaries, local events, and social news, and may very likely include your ancestors. Monterey has a digital reel. I don't know if Stockton has their newspaper digitized, but Monterey goes back to 1848 up to 1846 to 1964. And from 1964 to the current day, it's a microfilm. So you still have access to those newspaper articles. But what's wonderful about this is that they're indexed so that you can go in by looking at these, by putting in a, let me show you, by putting in a name or an event. My great-grandfather was Daniel Monroe. I could put that, pop that in, and 2 articles came up. And those articles are full text. Sorry about the blurriness on this. I wanted to make it a little larger. This was a land notice. Frank Hopkins was looking for witnesses to support a claim that he was making. And my great-grandfather was listed as a witness. Now, the reason why this was interesting to me is, again, this is 1888. It places him in San Lucas. He must have gone and gotten his mail in San Lucas. At this time, he was managing a Miller and Lux ranch outside of King City. And it's interesting to me to say, aha, okay, 1888, he's still there. This other article is about his passing, and his sister-in-law, the sister of his wife, was taking the train up from Hollister to attend his funeral. I did not know he had a stroke and that he and was paralyzed to some extent over a year before he passed. That was interesting information to me. The Carmel pine cone is indexed through the Carmel library. So I want to check that out if you're looking for some tidbits about Carmel. Clippings are in the clipping file. Here's the Colton Hall. I was trying to find out, my great-grandfather, I was told, went to school there when it was a school, but you can go over there and you can see some of the lists of students that were enrolled in the school, and you can work with the historians over there at Colton Hall. The San Benito County Historical Society does not have anything digitized. These were the actual newspapers that were brought out to me, the 1800s newspapers. And I was leafing through these newspapers, the Evening Freelance, and I found these amazing articles. One is Mrs. Emma Monroe, her obituary, and a great aunt who had whooping cough, the death of my great-grandfather, and Jarvis brothers, who were members of my family, married into that family. Maps. These are the map files, or ephemera that need to be laid out. These are the files that are often in the back rooms. The maps are historic maps, they're cemetery maps, they're plat maps, they're Sanborn maps. We'll go a little bit more into this when we talk about searching for your house in a couple of months. This was a map that was at the Westfield Historical Society in New Jersey. This was a find. This was on the wall in that Westfield Historical Society. And one of my ancestors has land up there. So I said to the historian there, I said, okay, how can I, this is Revolutionary times, how can I find that piece of land and at least go up there and check it out? I know that's probably, houses are up there now. He said, okay, you take this road, you take a left here, etc. So my husband and I navigated our way up there, and we found the general area, and we knew that it was the area because he had a sawmill. And when we saw Sawmill Road, we go, aha, this has got to be it. So we got a sense of the land that he had during the Revolutionary times. Also at that Westfield Historical Society was a cemetery map of the Revolutionary Cemetery there in Westfield. And that was not online. That was at the Westfield Historic Society. So I took that map and went over to the cemetery and found the graves of my ancestors. So that was really helpful. This was in North Dakota. I was in Bismarck in the North Dakota State Library, and I found these plat maps, and these showed me, this up here is the area where my great-grandfather got 160 acres from the Homestead Act. And this was land owned by his brother-in-law. Well, these people were his children. So although this plat map came out later, it was interesting to see how the land was passed on to his children. And we went over and looked and stood on this land, and that was quite an experience. The San Benito County Historical Society has plat maps, again, not digitized, but this area right here was owned by relatives on Powell Street and 5th in Hollister. The Sanborn maps are maps that were done by the insurance companies in the 19th and 20th century till about the 1960s. And they show the locations of houses. And you may recognize where this is. This is Pacific Street. The library would be right over to the right here. This is the education department building. The high school would be further up here. But notice how they're all wooden houses now, doctor's offices on Pacific Street. But they're all here. The blue means that there's masonry around it. The insurance companies use this to assess the liability of urban areas, and they did maps for over 12,000 cities throughout the country. And the Monterey Public Library has microfilm of these maps in the county. Carmel Public Library has a website, a link to a website, which has Sanborn maps all over the state of California. And the Library of Congress has maps all over the country. So you might want to access this when you're looking for where your family lived. These are particularly helpful. This is the Goff family who had that lot, those two lots on the plat map. This is a Sanborn map, and these in 1886, you can see it looks like they may have had a garage or something they built on it. But other than that, nothing's built on it. In 1892, they've built a house, a garage, and probably a chicken coop. So you can follow how this house was developed. And then in 1902, they've done a second house. So Sanborn maps, which are not, all of them are not digitized, are very helpful. And they're not on subscription sites. Land records, the Homestead Act of 1862 and courthouses, these are just priceless and not digitized. I wrote to the National Records and Archives to get the affidavit of my the land that my Andrews Petter owned in North Dakota. And they sent me the digital copies that they had. I scanned them. The San Benito County Courthouse has deeds. This is a family in Hollister. Again, the Goff family deed. Health records, Agnew State Hospital. My another great grandfather was in Agnews, and I was wondering what happened there? Well, I was able to find out that he went there right after his wife died, and he apparently had dementia, and he died shortly after. But the records were all there. These aren't scanned anywhere. I had to go there to get that. But I could have written them and they would have sent me that. And that's in California State Archives in Sacramento. Again, records of school teachers. My aunt was a school teacher in Hollister. She's there in the picture on the right. I didn't know when this picture was taken. I assumed it was the early part of the 20th century, but I couldn't identify it. This record showed me she was a school teacher in the Hollister School in 1905 and 1906. So bingo, that picture was taken then. That really was nice to be able to place that in time. There's audio recordings. Monterey Public Library. Monterey Park has video recordings, Pioneers of Alta California, the California Missions, the Sardine, Streets of Sardine. Video recordings are in all these places. And local history, mug books, books commemorating a town's anniversary, historical society newsletters and journals. These all provide background information on a time and a place. I recommend that if you do work with an historical society or a genealogical society, that you actually join that society, because their newsletters are really helpful. And they do give you a background on the area and keep you up to date with the discoveries that they found. The mug books are the who's who of the 19th and 19th century, mostly 1880s, 1890s. And I found this picture of the Hollister farm of a great-great-grandfather in the mug book. And I found this in the Monterey Public Library. And I wanted to show you this one thing that the Monterey Public Library has, which is really great, is this biographical index. If you have Monterey people or Santa Cruz or San Benito people, look them up in this index and you can see if there is a write-up about them. I was lucky to find that picture in that particular one. So check that one out. This was an article on an in-law, George Blakey, who is in one of those coast counties, Central California, which I found through that biography index. The World Cat is a way to find books that are in libraries all over the place. Let me just show you this one. Buxton. I'm going to look up that town in North Dakota that I have done a lot of research on. Okay, here comes the Buxton. Now this book, a Buxton Centennial book, I see that it's at the North Dakota State Library. It's in Fargo, it's in Grand Forks. And I say, aha, I can get this book either through interlibrary loan, that is going into two libraries, two systems offer that, the Monterey County Free Library and Carmel. They're not doing it right now, but they will when they open up again. I checked on that. But I see that it's there at the Grand Forks Library. I can do two things. I can ask for an interlibrary loan, or I can call them and say, hey, this is on your shelf. Can you go and look and see if any of my ancestors are in it? Well, I wrote them. I did do that. And they got back to me and they said, yes, in the Buxton Centennial book, there's a mention of your Mr. Sandgren. Here's a photo that I have of him and his daughter and his wife. And they sent this to me. A neighbor, Mr. Sandgren, told having gone on skis to Fargo for a badly needed sack of flour, which he carried home on his back. This was a 120-mile round trip, but the pioneer spirit was strong, and so was his back, and it had to be done. Now, that may be a little hyperbole. I'd look to see if it was Buxton to Fargo. It was 60 miles up and 60 miles back. But I love that story. That just gave me some flavor to his life, to what kind of a man he might have been. The Norwalk Public Library in Connecticut had some amazing things that were not digitized. The Westfield Genealogy newsletter, I made a point of joining that society because I get regular things from them and I'm learning continually. In one of their newsletters, they had a breakdown of the different towns, and I was really confused by these towns, these colonial towns, and this helped me understand that. Their newsletter was called The Gleanings from the Westfields. Then there's books that you might want to find. Escalon is where my father is from. While the Women Only Wept. This was about my fifth great grandmother who escaped, was a loyalist and escaped into Canada. But you want to check and see if some of these books might be digitized, because some books are on Google Books and some books are on the Internet Archive and some on our Half the Trust digital library. Just check before you do an interlibrary loan. You might be able to find them to be digitized. So local libraries have the details that make your ancestor's story interesting. These details may not be found on the big 4 subscription sites, and they may not be found on Google. They may be found in an archival document box or in a vertical file. So it's really important to reach out and contact that library or that archive directly. And if you have Monterey ancestors, visit some of the wonderful libraries and archives that are right here in our own county. And those of you that have ancestors in other places, as we all do, reach out to those libraries and archives. Call, email, and visit. The librarians will be very happy to help you, and they'll have the details that can add to your story. And I don't know if you recognize this room, but this is the room in the New England Historic Genealogical Society that is featured on Henry Louis Gates' Finding Your Roots program that some of you may have watched. And that's the famous room where he often interviews people. So be sure and check out the resources at the Monterey Public Library. Oh, and I wanted to just share with you one thing here on the genealogy site that is on the Monterey Public Library. I've done a video searching for your roots at the library, and I go into more detail about things that are actually at the Monterey Public Library. And I use my Monterey family as an example, and I show how I've put together their story using the Monterey Public resources and some other resources in the county, but I go into it in more detail. So if that interests you, you might check out that video. Okay, let's see. And finishing up, next month, we're going to talk about photos. My COVID project has been to identify and organize photos and to restore in some ways too. So I'm hoping that you'll join me again next month. That would be July 8th at 4 o'clock. And we'll talk about photos and how we can identify them. What are some tips on those photos that don't have anything on the back? So we'll look at that next month. And then after that, we'll look at DNA in August. We'll look at Every Home Has a Story in September. And October, something that we're all facing. What are we going to do with all of our family stuff? The heirlooms and the research that we've done. Well, I've got some tips for you. And I'm working on it. I can at least give you some ideas about what to do. And then in November, we're going to talk about sharing your family stories and about just jumping in and doing it, because you want to get those stories out there. So Sean, who is the reference and local history librarian at Monterey, is happy to answer your questions. And I'm happy to answer anything too. So please email me or email Sean. And we look forward to staying in touch with you. And hopefully we'll see you next month. So Sean, I'm going to stop sharing and get back to.
All right. Thank you so much, Kathy. That was a wealth of information and knowledge that we can definitely use for our genealogy research. Thank you for sharing. We had a couple questions from the chat that I want to. The first one, if you could repeat the 3 sources for digital books that you mentioned.
Oh, okay. Internet Archive, Google Books. Google Books is really good. Internet Archive and Hathi Trust books. And they're all free, they're all online, and they often will digitize a historical, a family history or a history of a local area.
Thank you. And our next question, where do you find mug books, and what time period and what places do they cover?
Okay, the mug books are all over the country, and they're often in public libraries, and they're generally 1880s, 1890s, and they were the who's who of that time period. I'm not sure if people paid to have their write-up in there, but I'm pretty sure either they were interviewed or they wrote it themselves, because they're not humble about the amazing things they've done. But they do give you family names, they give you business associations that the person may be involved in. They talk about degrees, educational degrees, the children. They're really a wealth of information, and they are not digitized. They call them mug books because often there will be a picture of the person in the book, and they're by county. Monterey Public Library does have Santa Cruz and San Benito. So check in the public library of the area where your ancestors lived to see if they have it. Go on to their catalog and see if there is a biography, or just write them, email them and find out.
Thank you. And I at this time, if anyone would like to unmute themselves and ask Kathy any questions on resources she mentioned, please feel free to chime in.
Anything else? Well,
Kathy?
yes. Oh, hi, Marianne.
Hi. I'm just curious if there's a quick answer to how the Allen County Public Library in the middle of Indiana became a mecca of all of these genealogical resources. There must be a story there.
Well, I don't know the specific story. I do know that there were some movers and shakers in that library that started to accumulate resources, and it became known as a place to actually send your research. And Kurt Witcher, who is currently at that library, and I had the pleasure of being in an elevator with him once, and I bombarded him with questions. I said, Kurt, is it really true that in the dead of the night, people come with boxes of family trees and research and leave it at your door? And he said, yes, it is. They will take these family trees, these notes that people have, and they will put them together and they will keep them in the library. And they're trying to digitize as much as they can. So it's become, as you use the word Mecca, Mary Jane, it's become this place where people can send their research. And so that's something for all of us to think about as we think about what's going to happen to our research if our kids are not as interested in this as we are, that maybe we want to make arrangements to have things sent there. But they are very helpful. There's a whole staff of genealogy librarians there, and they will answer your questions. Also, they have a number of webinars on their site as well. So it is sort of an interesting thing but conferences are often held in Fort Wayne because that library is there.
Kathy,
Yes.
Kathy, I just wanted to say, I really liked all the reasons that you listed for why we do our research, for why we do genealogy. Some of those just gave me chills, like standing on the land of where your ancestors lived. I mean, I relate. That's just to me, and it's so healing. It's so healing, and just I just loved all those reasons. I mean, that was really well put.
Thank you. You know, my husband and I stood on that land, and my husband was very interested in the quality of the land. And he said, having had some agricultural experience, he said, it's interesting that this land wasn't so easy to plow, would not have been so easy to cultivate, because he was looking at some of the drainage of the swamp and whatever. And that really spoke to me, that they worked hard. They had to remove tree stumps, they had to remove rocks. Not only the Buxton, the North Dakota was a territory. I mean, there weren't a lot of people out there. And so they didn't have a large community to really connect with either. So they were on their own in a lot of ways. Of course, that's why the Homestead Act was put into effect in 1862, to have people move there and expand the country. And of course, then we've got the story of the Native Americans too. I mean, it's so complex. It's all, our history is so complex. Anyway, enough of that. Any other thoughts, questions? Sean, are there some more chat
So
things?
those were the questions from the chat, but I have a question for you. So for someone who's a beginner doing family history and genealogy, what one resource would you suggest would be a good place for someone who is basically starting from scratch?
Oh, good question, Sean. Well, I think that you really would want to explore the subscription sites, or the sites that are available at the library. Now, Ancestry and Heritage Quest are free at the public library. So as soon as the library opens, you might want to explore those two sites. Actually, right now you can do that remotely. Family Search is free, and that is a wonderful site. Play around with it, and maybe at some point we'll talk more about that in this series, how to navigate these subscription sites and these. That might be really helpful. Maybe something on Ancestry, but I would play around with them. You do need three things. You need a name, hopefully a date when they lived and when they died, and the place where they lived. And that's the place that you plug into these sites. And then you will see the documents that will come up.
Perfect. Thank you.
I hope that answers.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. Thank you. Karen, you have a question?
Yeah, Kathy, was Find My Past free, or is that a subscription?
That is a subscription site, and it is, now all of these have a 2-week plan.
And
You
I'm
can
sorry.
try it for free. So I would suggest that you get on just for those 2 weeks and try it out and see if it's helpful. Find My Past is British. So if you have British, Scottish,
Oh.
Welsh, Irish, I know you've got Swedish, so, but if you have any of those ancestors, it's a very good site. Australian, Canadian, New Zealand, it's a very good
Oh.
site.
Okay, and Heritage Quest, is that free or is there a charge?
So that's free. And if you have, I think, Sean, you need a Monterey Library card, but it may be on your Stockton Public Library. You might check it out. It is a popular library link.
I believe it is on the Monterey Public Libraries, and it doesn't require a library card number.
Oh, good.
So it might be, but I think you have to go through your local library's website to access it for free.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. I just didn't quite catch that.
Yes.
One question, if you could please repeat again what sites for various backgrounds, such as Israeli sites, etc.
Oh, My Heritage is a subscription site. We're going to talk more about this when we address the issues of DNA in a couple of months. This is an amazing site, and for those who are searching for ancestors it is an Israeli site. That's where it's based. for searching for ancestors in European countries, Scandinavia, Eastern European, Germany, France, Spain. They have documents that are in these countries. Plus, they have links to ancestors that are, or to cousins that are searching with you, and you can link up with your cousins that are in Europe. Their DNA
wow.
part of their program is very extensive, and is almost as big as Ancestries. So if you are looking for European resources and you're looking for connecting with European cousins, that is the place to go. And it's an up and coming subscription site that is very, very helpful.
And I just wanted to let everyone know, because Kathy brings up a lot of Monterey Public Library resources. In the chat is the link to what we call as a lib guide, or a library guide, that has a lot of the resources that she's mentioned on there that are through the Monterey Public Library website. So it's another good starting place. Another question, other than Find My Past for Irish or Scottish, Irish, and English ancestors, which sites are helpful?
Oh, there's quite a few. Whoever asked that, if they would like to email me, I will be happy to send them a list. There is a Scottish site that is a subscription site, which is very helpful, but there are some free Scottish sites as well in Ireland. That is a whole talk in itself. So I would be happy to send some of those ideas on.
And what was the site that was based in Israel?
It's called My Heritage. You'll see them at conferences. They often do talks and conferences. So anything else? Well, I hope to see you all next month when we look at photos. And it is a talk some of you may have heard already, but I always learn things when I hear things a second time too, and I'll be making some changes to that talk as well.
And just to let everyone know, Kathy mentioned finding your roots at the library. I did put a link to that YouTube video in the chat box, and also it is on the Monterey Public Library's website, YouTube page. And if you have any questions on the resources she talked about, I did email out earlier today a list of all the websites that Kathy mentioned. But if you did not get that, please feel free to reach out to me. I can send that again. Or if you need assistance finding these research, Kathy or I would be happy to help.
Great.
Well, thank you, Kathy, so much. Thank you for spending this time with us and providing us with a wealth of information. I hope it's inspiring to all of you. I'm inspired. Thank you, and hopefully we'll see you all next month. You can register for next month's event on the Monterey Public Library's event page. This is monthly and will continue for about 6 months. So so you can register all in advance if you'd like, just so you don't forget. But thank you all for joining, and hopefully we'll see you next month.
Thank you, Sean. I look forward
Thank
to
you,
seeing you
Kathy.
next month.
Fabulous job.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Kathy.